Time frame, 2013 to 2016. It's been a few years since the incident. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about it. I've got some good wine to drink, so I'll let my fingers do the talking. I thought I'd met the perfect woman. We met in the last year of college. We met at a party and hit it off instantly. She was a beautiful blonde with sun. She was a great kisser and could have been a model. She had a Kate Upton-type figure. She was kind, compassionate, sympathetic, a good listener, and had an active life with many friends. She liked my friends, and it was great. Over the 3 years we knew each other, our friend groups merged. Several of our friends began dating each other. It was some of the best times of my life. I was on for a postgrad in finance, and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to say that we ended up being successful in our own rights, but I'm not. I wasn't the best looking guy. I was 5 feet 11 inches and 190 pounds, and I liked the gym. I wasn't a super athlete, but I was built. I was very shy and didn't have a lot of prior relationships. When we first met, we were both really attracted to each other. We talked all night on the first night, then it went to texting, phone calls, and daily dates. After a year, when I started working at my new job, she moved in. I loved her family, and her family loved me. Her mother loved me the most, but her father was standoffish. After 2.5 blissful years of overseas vacations, hiking trips and luxury vacations, it was a whirlwind romance. I proposed to her and she said yes. I was over the moon. She was doing all the planning for the wedding. We were talking about our futures together, buying a house, children, and family trips that we were going to take together. Then, one evening after we both got home to our apartment, she was a little distant. I think I noticed it right away because we were really affectionate towards each other. This would only happen about once a week for the first month after the proposal, then it was more frequent. I would have been none the wiser except that I used to listen to a lot of Reddit on YouTube, so I waited and observed. These bouts of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours, then she would be right back to normal. After 6 months, the wedding was in a year, and she was like this almost every night. Sex was still great, and the relationship with her parents was still great, but over Thanksgiving at her parents' house, things took a turn. We lived just north of D.C., at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky. She was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk to her, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on like nothing was going on. I figured I could ask her about it later. She wasn't willing to talk about it and asked me to wait till we were home to discuss it. I agreed, as I loved her. We had a lot in common and I thought we could work through anything. Her mother was an older version of her, with the same stunning looks and just a few grays in her long, thick blonde hair. This is important later. Back home, I asked her about it, but she was unwilling to discuss it. When I pressed her for a week, she finally confessed that a guy at her work was trying to get to know her better. She wanted to be forthcoming, so she showed me her phone. As I looked through it, I noticed that all the texts happened during the time I deleted the messages, but I did go into her phone settings and turn on her locator because we shared the same phone plan. I honestly thought it would make me see that she wasn't doing anything wrong. Was I wrong? The second weekend after Thanksgiving, she had a company Christmas party that I had planned on going to, but I came down with food poisoning and had to back out. She had a girlfriend pick her up from our apartment because they planned on drinking a lot. I told her to have a great time and I'd see her in the morning. As I was vomiting and barely able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I checked her location. It was a restaurant, then the venue of the company party, then a bar. I wasn't concerned until I saw her phone stop at a downtown hotel. I was exhausted from the vomiting, and I finally fell asleep at 2 a.m. 7 a.m. I woke up and saw she was still at the hotel at noon. She finally came home and I was on the mend. She told me she loved me, and I asked her about the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her locations. She talked about the restaurant, the bar, but then said she went to her girlfriend's house to crash for the evening. First lie for the next 3 months, she has to start working later. Later, 3 or 4 days a week. As I start asking her about it, she becomes more and more defensive. I talked to her mom one evening when my fiancé didn't come home until late. I asked her mom about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she said that she thought her daughter might be stepping out of our relationship because of how she read her body language. She also said that her daughter was she was also becoming more distant in their weekly texting conversations. With all this speculation going on in my mind, I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later, I got a new project at work that was going to require me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the next 5 weeks. Starting in 2 weeks, it came with an increase in salary. As I broke the news to my fiancée, she was really happy for me, but I didn't think she was excited for the same reasons I was. So I went online and ordered 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my apartment. I put one in the living room/entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one looking down our hallway. They were really small and connected to the internet via a hidden network, so they couldn't be spotted on the Wi-Fi. I set up the cameras on my Wi-Fi network and waited. In my first week back, she had girlfriends over the first 2 nights and never worked late. On the 3rd night, a guy came over. I was furious. I was sitting in my hotel room, screaming at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. Then they went all the way, first on the couch, then in our bed. She bent ways for him that I didn't know were possible. What was the worst was as I was watching them get it on, I called her to see how her day. She went to answer the phone and told him to stop giving her anal and answers. I asked why she was breathing heavily, and she said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call was over, she went right back to doing the dirty. When I got home on Friday evening, I ignored her and went straight to bed. Early Saturday morning, I got up and went cycling. I was so upset that I didn't even realize I'd biked over 50 miles from our apartment. That was the furthest I'd ever biked before, but that day I went 105 miles. I cycled 6 miles back, absolutely exhausted. I showered, then she and I went out that evening and had fun with our friends. We had a lot of drinks. Is it breakup sex when the one you're going to break up with is oblivious? I was bursting with heartbreak, anger, rage, and feelings of betrayal. All these feelings were swirling around in my heart and mind. She, who used to be so attentive, was oblivious to all this. It hurt so much because I loved her so much. I finally confided in one of our mutual friends, and he told me I was told that they all knew about it for months. I was finally told that they all felt sorry for me, but no one said anything to me again, which is why they stopped inviting us out with them. I hadn't noticed it before, but I could look back and see that about 3 months prior, they gradually invited us less and less. I figured I would try and win her back the next weekend. I planned the entire weekend as a complete weekend of spoiling her in every way, whining and dying, pampering, massaging. I rubbed her shoulders and talked to her about our future plans and how much I loved her. I could tell I was starting to get through to her when, after her 4th glass of wine, she started to cry. I could see the guilt coming up to the surface, so I asked her what was wrong. But she got all choked up every time she tried to speak. So I told her that if there was something in her past, or if she was having some kind of conflict in her mind, she should speak to me about it. I said I was more than willing to listen. I told her I was willing to talk about it, and, if forgiveness was needed, I was prepared to forgive and move on. All she could say was how much she loved me. It was painful to hear that, as I had 4 videos of her and the other guy in our apartment having sex over the next 8 weeks of traveling to the Midwest. The trips lasted for what would be 10 weeks. I recorded over 41 hours of her having sex with what I later found out was her coworker. She never worked late once I was away. I tried to be extra attentive at the weekends for 8 weeks, but she got more and more distant. I decided to get away for a while, so I came up with a 12-step plan. Step 1 was to gather evidence. Step 2 was to get her out of the way so I could execute my plan. I booked a 2-week exclusive getaway trip for us at an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. She was really happy when I told her we were going to an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. Then, a week before we were due to go, I had to cancel and asked her to go with a friend. I knew it was over when she wasn't disappointed that I couldn't go. She's now booked a coworker to go with her. 3 days into her trip, I was the only one who could sign the lease. I had to find a job in another town. The company I had been working with in the Midwest had offered me a job with a slight increase in salary. I had to find a new place to live. I got an apartment in the above-mentioned location. When she is gone, I have to do the following 6 things: take her to the airport, go back home and pack all her things on the same day, Saturday. Get a new phone number and email address and cancel all social media on Monday. On Monday, I had the movers pack up all my things and ship them west. On Monday, I took all her things to her mother's house, which is 600 miles away. My fiancée's belongings fit into the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. From Tuesday to Saturday, I gave her mother the evidence. Then I started my new life. I didn't want to do anything that was illegal. I made sure that nothing of hers was missing. Packing all her stuff away was so hard. I've read so many times on Reddit about significant others saying they will never do it again when caught, but they don't stop. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move on. She never did. She came really close, but her secret was too hard for her to reveal. On Tuesday morning, I left our apartment, which is north of DC, for the last time. It took 10 hours to get to her mom's house. What happened when I got there was not what I was prepared for. I arrived at her mom's house around 8 p.m. That evening, I figured she'd be surprised to see me since I was coming down unannounced. They lived in a gated community, so I had to buzz her house from the front gate. She was waiting for me outside when I drove up. I could tell she'd been crying when I walked up to see her. I asked her what was wrong, and she hugged me. She was in tears, convinced her husband was cheating on her with a younger, slimmer, and prettier woman. I was taken aback, but I just held her for what felt like 10 minutes. She was sobbing and snotting on my right shoulder when she finally composed herself. I asked if we could go inside and talk. We went in, and I asked where her husband was. She said he was going fishing with his friends at a cabin an hour away. She also said he hates fishing. She seemed to know a lot more than she was letting on. It had been going on for about a year. We did some research and found a credit card hold charge for a 5-night stay at a hotel that was only 20 minutes away. The hotel was only 20 minutes away. I called to confirm and they said he was staying there for 4 nights with his mistress. I said, "What?" She said, 2 peas in a pod. I said, "Your husband is cheating on you, and your daughter is cheating on me. That's why I came here to drop her stuff off and move to X." I showed her the evidence. I showed her the evidence in a binder with screenshots I'd made after looking at the first few pages. She looked at me, dumbfounded. We hugged and cried for about 30 minutes. Then she said, "Stop crying," and looked at me. She said, "Well, tonight, there's nothing we can do except for you and I to knock out these 3 bottles. Moscato, and in every room of the house." She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine and walked out to their private pool deck. "Are you coming out here, or are you going to get revenge now?" she said. I won't go into much detail because I don't want to get blue balls, but that night and for the next 3 days we were nonstop. When those days were over, She said goodbye passionately and I drove to my new destination. She kept me informed as to everything that happened when her ex-fiancé got back. The day her ex-fiancé got back was pretty epic. I canceled my phone the morning of the day she got back, so when the plane landed and she called for a ride, it indicated the phone was disconnected. She had her lover take her home. I dropped her off and left when she came to the door. A strange couple who were new tenants answered it and she freaked out. She tried to call me a lot because the number was no longer valid. She went to her girlfriend's to stay for a while as her coworker was already married when she called her mom in a panic. Her mom told her that. I came down and dropped off all her things, and I mentioned that all her money was down there as well, 600 MOA. Her mom didn't tell her that I'd had more in 3 days than her fiancé and I had in the last 6 months, but she did tell her that she knew that she was cheating on me. I said I'd found a new job, place to stay, and new career far away from her. And all the friends we had. Apparently, her mother was separating from her father due to infidelity. She cried for days and took a week off work, but she found comfort in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never let her know where I was. I had completely cut off that part of my life. The only link I had to that old life was Fiancée's mom. And she's kept our secret to this day. My fiancée was ghosted the most. What's your opinion about OP? Thanks for joining us in our stories where revenge is served hot. Please consider subscribing to our channel to ensure your next chef remains loyal. Tune in for the next one to get your revenge appetite fulfilled. If you're below 18, hold on, it's not for the faint-hearted. I'm really sorry to hear that.